November 18th, 1944. The Hürtgen Forest, Germany. Obergefreiter Klaus Richter crouches behind a shattered oak tree, his Karabiner 98K clutched against his chest. Through the grey mist that clings to the forest floor like a burial shroud, he watches American soldiers advance through the trees 200 yards distant. His squad leader, Feldwebel Hans Schmidt, has been fighting since Poland in '39. The Feldwebel's weathered face carries the confidence of a veteran who has faced every weapon the Allies possess. Schmidt raises his hand, signalling the ambush. 8 German soldiers prepare to engage the advancing Americans with precise, controlled fire. They have done this dozens of times across Russia, North Africa, and now the German homeland. The mathematics of infantry combat favor defenders with good cover and clear fields of fire. Each German rifleman knows he can deliver accurate shots at a rate of perhaps 10 rounds per minute with his bolt-action Mauser. But within 30 seconds of the first shots, Klaus realizes something is profoundly wrong. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The American fire isn't the familiar crack and pause of bolt-action rifles. It's a continuous roar that sounds like an entire company engaging simultaneously. Klaus fumbles with his bolt, trying to chamber another round, when a bullet strikes the tree inches from his head. Schmidt's voice cuts through the chaos. Fall back now. The Americans aren't pausing to work their bolts. They're not pausing at all. 2 weeks later, in a field hospital 30 miles behind the lines, Klaus listens to Schmidt describe their encounter to an intelligence officer. Herr Hauptmann, I am telling you what I saw. 1 American rifleman fired more rounds than 4 of my men combined. There was no pause, no cycling of the bolt. The intelligence officer produces a technical manual with a photograph of a rifle that looks heavier than the American Springfield. The M1 Garand, he says. The Americans have equipped their entire infantry with semi-automatic rifles. While you work your bolt 5 times, they fire 40 aimed shots. Schmidt's face goes pale. Their entire infantry? It has been their standard issue since '38. How does one country equip millions of soldiers with semi-automatic rifles while the rest of the world still issues bolt actions? How does a Canadian immigrant's obsessive design work create America's most revolutionary infantry weapon? January 1st, 1888, Street Remy, Quebec, Canada. Jean Cantius Garand enters the world as one of 12 children born to a farming family. His mother dies when he is 11, and his father moves the family to Jewett City, Connecticut. Young John sweeps floors in textile mills and learns English from other workers. But unlike many boys trapped in mill work, John's mind constantly analyzes the machinery around him. By 14, John has designed and patented a telescopic screwjack. At 16, he patents an automatic bobbin winding machine. At 19, he finds work with Brown and Sharp in Providence, Rhode Island, one of America's premier tool-making firms. Here, among skilled machinists and precision equipment, John's natural abilities flourish. But it is a hobby that will define his legacy. John discovers target shooting and becomes fascinated by Springfield rifles. In quiet evenings, he begins sketching designs for a rifle that could fire multiple shots without manual operation of the bolt. Semi-automatic weapons existed in theory, but reliability remained elusive. 1917. America enters the Great War, and John Garand submits a light machine gun design to the War Department. The design demonstrates his understanding of military requirements. Army ordnance officials recognize the young engineer's talent, offering him a position at the Bureau of Standards. The annual salary of $3,500 represents financial security that mill work could never provide. November 4th, 1919. John Garand reports for work at Springfield Armory in Massachusetts. The Army's directive is specific. Develop a semi-automatic rifle. Garand throws himself into the work with obsessive focus. By 1925, he has refined his primer-actuated design. But the Army changes the cartridge specification, rendering his system unworkable. Garand redesigns his entire operating system switching to gas operation. A small hole drilled in the barrel allows expanding gas to cycle the bolt. The redesign requires 2 years of intensive work. Then the Army changes requirements again, adopting a smaller .276 cartridge. Garand adapts once more. But politics intervene. General Douglas MacArthur reviews the proposed adoption of .276 caliber. The Army possesses millions of rounds of .3006 ammunition in storage. On February 25, 1932, all work on the .276 cartridge ceases. All resources will be directed toward perfecting Garand's design in .30 caliber. John Garand, now 44 years old, begins his third major redesign. By August 3, 1933, his T1E2 prototype passes all military trials. The rifle receives its official designation: United States Rifle, caliber 30, M1. But designation and production are separated by years of refinement. In May 1934, 75 M1 rifles go to field trials. The reports document numerous problems. Garand returns to his workbench, addressing each failure with methodical precision. November 7, 1935, the M1 Garand is cleared for procurement. January 9, 1936, it becomes the Army's standard service rifle. July 21, 1937, Springfield Armory successfully tests the first production model M1 Garand. Initial production is 10 rifles per day. By January 1940, production reaches 100 rifles per day. The rifle weighs 9.5 pounds. It feeds from an 8-round en-bloc clip that inserts from the top. When the final round fires, the empty clip ejects with a distinctive metallic ping. The gas system represents the rifle's most sophisticated component. Gas pressure flows through a port in the barrel into a cylinder. The gas pushes a piston that drives an operating rod rearward, cycling the bolt. The entire cycle occurs in a fraction of a second. The soldier simply pulls the trigger and the rifle fires. No manual bolt operation required. The theoretical rate of fire is 40 to 50 rounds per minute, with careful aimed shots. A well-trained rifleman with the M1 Garand can deliver as much firepower as 5 soldiers armed with bolt-action rifles. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. The M1 Garand is standard issue, but significant numbers of American soldiers still carry Springfield 1903 bolt actions. Springfield Armory operates around the clock. By January 1942, production reaches 1,103 rifles per day. Winchester Repeating Arms receives contracts to produce additional rifles. Combined production approaches 4,000 rifles per day by war's end. Between 1937 and 1945, American factories produce over 4 million M1 Garands. North Africa provides the M1 Garand's first major combat test. Initial reports are mixed. Some units praise the rifle's firepower, others document jamming problems in sandy conditions. But a pattern emerges. Units that enforce rigorous cleaning report high reliability. The firepower advantage becomes apparent in close-quarters fighting. Tunisia, March 1943, Hill 609. An American patrol climbs through heavy fog. The fog lifts suddenly. 20 yards ahead, a German patrol stands equally exposed. Both groups freeze. The Americans carry M1 Garands. The Germans carry Karabiner 98K rifles. The American soldiers bring their M1s to shoulder and begin firing in a sustained volley. The semi-automatic rifles fire as fast as triggers can be pulled. The German soldiers attempt to return fire, but working the bolt requires 3 distinct motions. In the time required to complete this sequence, an American soldier fires 3 aimed shots. The skirmish ends in less than 30 seconds. The German patrol is effectively destroyed. Sicily, July 1943. Operation Husky marks the first large-scale American amphibious assault in Europe. The Sicilian campaign involves brutal close-quarters fighting, where engagement distances rarely exceed 200 yards. German and Italian defenders discover the tactical disadvantage of engaging American riflemen in environments that favor rapid fire. Staff Sergeant Michael Delaney records his impressions in a letter home. The Germans are good soldiers, well-trained and disciplined. But, when we get close, our Garands give us an edge. I can fire 8 aimed shots before their sniper gets off 3. A captured German intelligence report dated August 1943 analyzes American capabilities. American infantry squads demonstrate firepower disproportionate to their numbers. The semi-automatic rifle creates the impression of engaging a force twice actual size. The report includes a recommendation. Consider development and deployment of semi-automatic rifles to frontline infantry as a matter of priority. But Germany lacks the industrial capacity to re-equip millions of soldiers. The Gewehr 43 will enter production in limited numbers, but German industry can never match American output. The Italian campaign provides the most demanding test of the M1's capabilities. Fighting across the Italian peninsula involves every terrain type and weather condition. Private First Class Robert Hayes, 34th Infantry Division, experiences the full range through months of continuous operations. Hayes learns the rifle's quirks through bitter experience. The gas system requires daily cleaning. Water in the gas cylinder causes failures. The en-bloc clip must be inserted firmly. But Hayes also learns that proper maintenance rewards him with reliability that bolt actions cannot match. His M1 functions through rain, mud, and snow. The famous metallic ping of the ejecting clip becomes both curse and blessing. The sound announces the rifle is empty. But experienced soldiers carry empty clips to throw on the ground, creating false acoustic signatures. German intelligence reports reference the ping, but captured documents suggest it proved less tactically significant than mythology suggests. Monte Cassino, February 1944. Corporal James Mitchell participates in the assault on German positions. His squad encounters a machine gun position commanding their approach. Mitchell and 2 other riflemen generate sufficient fire to keep German heads down while the rest of the squad maneuvers. The 3 Garands create a rate of fire the German crew mistakes for machine gun fire. The position falls without American casualties. In the Pacific, the M1 Garand faces environmental conditions that test every aspect of its design. Guadalcanal, August 1942. The 1st Marine Division storms ashore carrying a mixture of Springfields and M1s. The jungle environment creates immediate challenges. High humidity promotes corrosion. Mud infiltrates mechanisms. The Marines initially view the M1 with skepticism, but Japanese infantry tactics emphasize close-range assault, creating situations where sustained fire matters more than long-range precision. Banzai charges require defensive firepower that bolt actions cannot provide. Private First Class Eugene Sledge experiences his first banzai charge on Peleliu in September 1944. The Japanese attack comes at night. In the chaos, Sledge fires his M1 as fast as he can pull the trigger. "The Garand saved our line that night," he writes. "We poured fire into them until the barrels were too hot to touch. If we'd been working bolts, they would have overrun us." Tarawa, November 1943, demonstrates another advantage. Amphibious assaults require soldiers to wade through surf. The M1's gas system proves surprisingly resistant to salt water when properly maintained. Marines learn to strip and clean immediately after wading ashore. Iwo Jima, February 1945. Every Marine landing carries an M1 Garand. The fighting occurs at ranges where firepower overwhelms marksmanship. Sergeant John Basilone tells his squad, "We've learned to use the Garand like the Germans use their machine guns. Controlled bursts, aimed fire, keep moving." By early 1945, German intelligence assessments focus extensively on the M1's tactical impact. One report captured near Munich provides detailed analysis. The American soldier, armed with his semi-automatic rifle, demonstrates firepower previously associated with light machine guns. Traditional defensive tactics prove inadequate against these capabilities. The Hürtgen Forest, November 1944. Klaus Richter recovers from his wounds in time to rejoin his unit. His battalion intelligence officer briefs them about American weapons. The Americans can deliver 40 aimed shots per minute per rifleman. In the time you work your bolt 5 times, they will have fired 8 full clips. This is verified by every unit that has faced them. Klaus looks at his Karabiner 98K, a rifle whose design dates to 1898. Accurate, reliable, beautifully crafted, but fundamentally obsolete. Okinawa, April 1945. Private First Class Robert Williams, 6th Marine Division, participates in the assault on Sugarloaf Hill. The hill's defenders occupy caves and bunkers requiring close assault by rifle squads. Williams fires over 300 rounds through his M1 during 3 days of continuous fighting. The barrel becomes so hot it discolors, but the gas system continues cycling. That rifle saved my life more times than I can count. Williams writes home. The Japs are brave fighters, but when we get close, our Garands give us the edge. We can put out so much fire they can't coordinate their defense. The Pacific Island warfare creates unique tactical challenges. Japanese defensive tactics emphasize concealment and surprise at close range. American infantry must generate overwhelming fire the instant contact occurs. The M1's sustained fire capability proves decisive in this environment. The psychological transformation among American troops parallels tactical vindication. Initial skepticism gives way to trust as soldiers discover the rifle's battlefield performance. By war's end, American infantry universally prefer the M1 to any alternative. Even soldiers, who initially distrusted the weapon, become zealous advocates. May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders, ending the European War. American forces occupied German territory, cataloguing vast quantities of captured weapons. Among them are thousands of Karabiner 98K rifles, Gewehr 43 semi-automatics, and Sturmgewehr 44 assault rifles. Comparative testing confirms what battlefield experience demonstrated. The Karabiner 98K is beautifully manufactured, accurate, and reliable, but its bolt-action design limits tactical effectiveness against semi-automatic opposition. The Gewehr 43 is mechanically sound but more complex and expensive than the M1, explaining limited production. The Sturmgewehr 44 represents revolutionary potential but enters production too late. Fewer than 500,000 are manufactured before war's end. American ordnance officers studying the Sturmgewehr recognize its innovative intermediate cartridge concept. But in 1945, the M1 Garand remains the world's most effective mass-produced infantry rifle, proven across every theater and environmental condition. John Garand continues working at Springfield Armory through the war's end and into the post-war period. His design bureau develops improvements to the M1, addressing minor issues that combat experience identified. But the basic design requires no fundamental changes. The rifle that entered production in 1937 remains mechanically sound in 1945. Garand also begins development work on what will become the M14 rifle, exploring selective fire capabilities and detachable magazines. The project occupies his final years at the armory, but his health begins declining. The decades of intensive work, the pressure of wartime production, the weight of knowing millions of soldiers depended on his design, all take their toll. He retires on November 30th, 1953, after 34 years of service to Springfield Armory and the United States military. His retirement ceremony is modest, reflecting the man's character. He gives no speeches, seeks no publicity. The recognition he values most comes from soldiers who carried his rifle in combat and survived. Garand lives quietly in Springfield, Massachusetts, with his wife Nellie. He maintains contact with Springfield Armory, occasionally consulting on technical matters. But mostly, he enjoys the quiet satisfaction of having completed his life's work. The rifle bearing his name has earned its place in history through performance that exceeded even his expectations. On February 16, 1974, John Cantius Garand dies at age 86. The obituaries note his contributions to American military capability, but the most meaningful tributes come from veterans who understand what his design meant in combat. Letters pour in from former soldiers and Marines, each one a testament to the rifle that kept them alive. His legacy extends beyond the weapon. John Garand demonstrated that immigrant determination combined with mechanical genius could produce innovations that change history. The textile mill worker who taught himself engineering armed American democracy in its greatest crisis. June 25, 1950. North Korean forces cross the 38th parallel. American forces deployed to Korea carry M1 Garands. The rifle will now face combat in extreme climate conditions. Summer temperatures exceed 100 degrees. Winter temperatures drop to 30 below zero. The M1 proves remarkably adaptable. The gas system functions in both extreme heat and brutal cold. The rifle's rugged construction withstands mountain warfare's rough handling. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir, November 1950, demonstrates effectiveness in the most extreme conditions. Marine and Army units face Chinese forces in temperatures reaching 20 below zero. The cold is so severe that weapons freeze, vehicles won't start, and exposed skin freezes in seconds. Private First Class James Gallagher, 7th Marine Regiment, defends a perimeter position against repeated Chinese attacks. His M1 functions reliably through 4 nights of continuous combat. "We were firing so much the bolts were running dry," Gallagher recalls years later. "The oil froze in the receivers. We were running them with no lubrication at all. But the Garands kept working. I saw guys with carbines whose weapons froze solid. The M1 just kept firing." The reliability in extreme cold validates the rifle's robust design. The gas system, while more complex than bolt-action mechanisms, proves less sensitive to cold than other semi-automatic designs. The operating rod and bolt continue functioning even when lubricants freeze solid. The simple, proven mechanism tolerates conditions that defeat more sophisticated weapons. Chinese forces, armed predominantly with bolt-action rifles, face familiar disadvantages. Their tactical doctrine emphasizes mass and momentum, using overwhelming numbers to achieve breakthrough. But against M1-equipped defenders generating sustained fire, the casualty ratios become catastrophic. A captured Chinese People's Volunteer Army assessment, dated December 1950, analyzes American defensive capabilities with clinical precision. Enemy infantry positions generate firepower disproportionate to visible force size. Single rifle companies inflict casualties comparable to regiment-size units. The semi-automatic rifle provides defensive advantage that mass assault cannot overcome without prohibitive losses. Recommend avoiding direct assault against dug-in positions. Emphasize infiltration tactics and night operations, where numerical superiority can be achieved before defensive fire becomes effective. The assessment recommends exactly what German intelligence suggested 5 years earlier. The same tactical adaptations, the same recognition of firepower, disadvantage. The same conclusion that conventional assault tactics fail against M1-equipped opponents. The Korean War's tactical conditions favor the M1 even more than World War II in some respects. The mountainous terrain creates natural defensive positions where sustained fire proves decisive. Chinese and North Korean forces employing human wave tactics find themselves channeled into killing zones where American riflemen can exploit the M1's sustained fire capability to devastating effect. Sergeant First Class Louis Millet, later awarded the Medal of Honor, commands a platoon during the defense of Hill 282 in February 1951. His 43 soldiers hold against repeated Chinese attacks over 3 nights. "We fired so many rounds, the barrels were glowing red," Millet later testifies. "But the Garands never quit on us. Every man in that platoon trusted his rifle completely. That trust kept us fighting when we should have been overrun." The testimonial reflects a pattern established throughout 2 wars. Soldiers who maintain their M1S properly develop absolute confidence in the weapon's reliability. That confidence translates into combat effectiveness that transcends simple mechanical advantage. The Korean War reveals some limitations. The rifle's weight becomes significant during long patrols. The 8-round capacity proves inadequate compared to weapons with larger magazines. But these limitations pale compared to fundamental effectiveness. Springfield Armory resumes production in 1952. International Harvester and Harrington and Richardson receive contracts for additional rifles. Between 1952 and 1957, nearly 1.5 million new M1 Garands enter service. The final M1 Garand rolls off Springfield Armory's line on May 17, 1957, 20 years of continuous production, over 5 million rifles manufactured, service in 2 major wars, a record of reliability unmatched in military history. The M1's influence on rifle design proves even more significant than direct military service. Every modern semi-automatic and automatic rifle incorporates principles John Garand refined. The M14, adopted in 1957, represents evolutionary development rather than revolutionary departure. Even the M16 employs gas-operated semi-automatic action pioneered by the M1. Consider the mathematics of infantry combat. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. In any firefight, the side that delivers more accurate shots per unit time possesses decisive advantage. The M1 Garand transformed this equation in ways German doctrine could not compensate for. A German squad of 10 riflemen can deliver 100 aimed shots per minute. An American squad of 12 riflemen delivers between 480 and 600 aimed shots per minute. The disparity is not merely quantitative, it is qualitatively transformative. German veterans consistently identify American firepower as the most significant tactical challenge. Oberst Hans von Loch provides representative assessment. The American soldier was well equipped, particularly with his semi-automatic rifle. In defensive positions, American infantry could generate fire that rivaled our machine guns. General George Marshall later identified the M1 Garand as one of the key factors enabling American military effectiveness. The M1 rifle gave our soldiers confidence and firepower advantage that influenced tactical outcomes across every theater, Marshall wrote. The weapon's reliability validated our decision to equip the entire infantry with semi-automatic rifles. The final vindication came from soldiers who carried M1 Garands into combat. Staff Sergeant William Morrison defended against German attack during the Battle of the Bulge. "We fired so many clips the barrels glowed," Morrison recalls. "But the Garands kept cycling. We'd have been overrun with Springfields." General George Patton makes his famous assessment in January 1945. "In my opinion, the M1 rifle is the greatest battle implement ever devised." The statement reflects understanding that infantry combat depends on individual soldiers delivering effective fire under stress, but it also contains recognition of something deeper. The M1 Garand represents industrial democracy's advantage over totalitarianism. America equipped millions of soldiers with the best individual weapon available because American industrial capacity made it possible. Germany produced approximately 400,000 Gewehr 43 rifles. American industry produced over 5 million M1 Garands in the same period. The disparity reflects fundamental differences in industrial organization and national resources. John Garand never receives royalties for his invention. On January 20, 1936, he transfers all rights to the United States government. His civil service salary represents his only compensation. A congressional bill proposing $100,000 in appreciation fails to pass. But he receives official recognition. In 1941, the Meritorious Civilian Service Award. On March 28, 1944, the Medal for Merit, the highest civilian decoration. The citation acknowledges, "For exceptionally meritorious service in the development and production of the United States rifle, which has contributed immeasurably to the success of American armed forces." Eugene Sledge, decades after Peleliu and Okinawa, keeps his training M1 at his home. He maintains it meticulously. "That rifle was my constant companion through hell," Sledge writes in his memoir. "It never let me down when I needed it most. I owe my life to John Garand's genius and American industry's capacity to arm us properly." The testimonial reflects thousands of similar statements. The M1 Garand earned loyalty through performance. Klaus Richter, the German soldier who first encountered M1-equipped forces in Hürtgen Forest, survives the war and immigrates to America in 1953. Working as a machinist in Detroit, he one day handles an M1 Garand at a gun shop. "We knew we were losing by 44, Richter tells the shop owner, but I didn't understand how completely until I faced American soldiers with these rifles. They had equipment we couldn't match, made by factories we couldn't bomb. The rifle was just one piece, but an important piece." The M1 Garand's legacy extends into popular culture. The rifle appears in countless films and television shows depicting World War II. Its distinctive appearance and the on-block clip's metallic ping make it instantly recognizable. But for veterans, the M1 represents something deeper. It represents the weapon that kept them alive, that gave them confidence under fire, that enabled them to fight effectively. The emotional connection reflects shared experience that transcends mechanical function. Modern collectors maintain the M1's legacy through active use. The civilian marksmanship program makes authentic military rifles available to qualified citizens. National match competitions continue featuring M1 Garands, maintaining marksmanship traditions dating to the rifle's development. The rifle's continued popularity reflects more than nostalgia. The M1 remains mechanically sound, accurate, and effective. Shooters achieve excellent results at ranges exceeding 500 yards. Rifles manufactured in the 1940s continue functioning reliably 80 years later. John Garand's design achieved something rare in engineering: timeless mechanical excellence that transcends the specific circumstances of its creation. The M1 works as well today as it did in 1944, testimony to design principles, emphasizing simplicity, reliability, and effectiveness. The United States stood alone among major combatants in equipping their entire infantry with semi-automatic rifles. The decision reflected industrial capacity, but it also reflected institutional willingness to embrace innovation and trust that American soldiers could maintain complex mechanisms under field conditions. The trust proved justified. American infantry maintained their M1 Garands reliably despite minimal technical training. The rifle's design facilitated field maintenance, allowing disassembly without specialized tools. This maintainability proved as important as mechanical sophistication. Staff Sergeant William Morrison, who defended at the Bulge, keeps his M1 until passing it to his grandson in 2003. "This rifle saved my life and the lives of men in my platoon," Morrison tells his grandson. "It worked when everything else was falling apart. That's the only measure that matters." The transfer of weapon from veteran to descendant represents connection between generations, physical artifact linking present to past. The M1 Garand serves as tangible reminder that freedom requires defenders armed with tools, equal to the challenge. The rifle that began as a Canadian immigrant's obsessive design work became the weapon that armed American democracy in its greatest crisis. From textile mill floors to Springfield Armory's engineering offices to battlefields across 2 continents and countless islands, the M1 Garand proved that American ingenuity, industrial capacity, and willingness to innovate could produce weapons that changed the course of history. But the story contains layers of meaning beyond simple technological superiority. The M1 Garand represents what happens when democratic societies face existential threats. The weapon's development occurred not through military decree from authoritarian leadership, but through systematic refinement by a civil service engineer working within bureaucratic constraints. John Garand answered to Army ordnance boards, survived budget limitations, adapted his designs to changing military requirements, and persevered through years of testing and modification. The process was frustratingly slow compared to autocratic systems that could mandate instant adoption, but the result was a weapon so thoroughly tested and refined that it functioned reliably under conditions that designers never anticipated. German weapons development followed different patterns. The Wehrmacht could mandate rapid development and deployment of new weapons, But the system's top-down nature meant that flawed designs sometimes reached production before adequate testing revealed critical problems. The Gewehr 41, Germany's first semi-automatic rifle, suffered reliability issues that limited its effectiveness. The improved Gewehr 43 corrected many problems, but entered production too late to matter strategically. More fundamentally, German industry operated under constraints that American industry never faced. Allied bombing disrupted production, destroyed factories, and killed skilled workers. Resource shortages forced compromises in materials and manufacturing quality. The logistical nightmare of supporting multiple weapon types across vast fronts diverted resources from standardization efforts. America faced no such constraints. Factories operated beyond enemy reach. Raw materials flowed freely from secure sources. The industrial base expanded continuously throughout the war. Most crucially, the decision to standardize on the M1 Garand meant that production economies of scale could be fully exploited. By 1943, Springfield Armory and Winchester were producing M1 Garands with efficiency that amazed even American production engineers. Assembly line techniques perfected in automobile manufacturing transferred seamlessly to weapons production. The M1's design facilitated mass production through careful attention to manufacturing tolerances and parts interchangeability. German soldiers facing American infantry understood these realities at visceral level. They recognized that the M1 represented not just superior design, but superior industrial capacity applied to military problems. The rifle symbolized everything that made American military power ultimately insurmountable: vast resources, technological innovation, and industrial efficiency. Klaus Richter, recovering from Hürtgen Forest wounds, processes this understanding during conversations with other wounded soldiers. They compare notes about American equipment, abundant artillery ammunition, air support availability, vehicle reliability, and the ubiquitous semi-automatic rifle that every American soldier carries. "We're fighting the American economy," one veteran observes bitterly. "Their soldiers are equipped better than our elite units, and there are millions of them, all carrying those Garands." The observation captures strategic reality that tactical skill cannot overcome. Germany possessed excellent soldiers, proven tactics, and defensive advantages. But American material superiority, exemplified by universal distribution of the M1 Garand, created cumulative advantages that eroded German defensive capabilities. General George S. Patton understood this when he called the M1 the greatest battle implement ever devised. The statement wasn't mere hyperbole. Patton recognized that the rifle represented American civilization's response to totalitarian aggression, overwhelming material advantage applied through industrial democracy. German soldiers learned to fear the continuous fire of American infantry. Japanese defenders discovered that banzai charges failed against sustained firepower. Chinese forces found that mass assault could not overcome the simple mathematical advantage of 40 aimed shots versus 5. The M1 Garand won no battles alone. Wars are won through combined arms: infantry, artillery, armor, air power, logistics, intelligence, and leadership. But the rifle provided American infantry with firepower advantage that influenced countless tactical engagements. Accumulated across entire campaigns, those tactical advantages became strategically decisive. John Garand, the quiet engineer who spent decades refining his design, created more than a weapon. He created a symbol of American industrial democracy's ability to arm its defenders with the best tools available. The textile mill worker whose formal education ended in childhood became the man whose genius helped preserve freedom against fascist tyranny. That legacy endures in every M1 Garand still firing at rifle ranges across America. It endures in veteran memoirs mentioning the weapon that kept them alive. It endures in collectors who maintain these rifles as working links to history. It endures in the simple recognition that sometimes the greatest achievements come from immigrants who see possibilities that native-born citizens overlook. The M1 Garand represents the American promise that talent and determination matter more than birth circumstances. that innovation thrives when individuals possess freedom to pursue excellence, that democracy, properly mobilized, can outproduce and outfight any totalitarian system. Modern military historians analyzing World War II increasingly recognize the M1 Garands' strategic significance. Early historical accounts focused on tanks, aircraft, and major battles. But detailed tactical analysis reveals how individual weapon superiority accumulated into operational advantages that decided campaigns. At Normandy, American rifle companies advancing inland from the beaches generated firepower that German defenders could not match. At Guadalcanal, Marines held defensive lines against Japanese attacks that should have succeeded through sheer numbers. At Chosin, surrounded American units maintained defensive fire that prevented Chinese forces from achieving decisive breakthrough. In each case, the M1 Garand provided the sustained fire capability that kept defensive lines intact or enabled offensive momentum to continue. The rifle didn't guarantee victory, but it shifted probability, significantly in American favor. In war, where outcomes often balance on narrow margins, such advantages matter immensely. The rifle's influence on post-war military thinking proves equally significant. Every major military power developed semi-automatic or automatic rifles after World War II. The Soviet Union adopted the SKS and later the AK-47. Britain developed the EM-2 before settling on the L1A1. France produced the MAS-49. Germany's Bundeswehr initially armed with American M1 Garands before adopting the G3. The universal shift from bolt action to self-loading rifles reflects lessons learned fighting American forces. Enemy soldiers who faced M1-equipped infantry understood that bolt-action doctrine was obsolete. Military establishments worldwide recognized that future infantry required weapons providing sustained fire capability. John Garand's design established the template that others followed. Gas-operated actions, rotating bolt mechanisms, semi-automatic, fire, all became standard features of infantry rifles because the M1 proved these principles under combat conditions. The rifle's influence extends through the M14 to modern designs like the M16 and M4, creating a direct lineage from Garand's 1930s innovation to 21st century weapons. The Civilian Marksmanship Program, established to maintain American marksmanship traditions, makes authentic M1 Garands available to qualified citizens. Thousands of these rifles transfer to civilian hands annually, enabling new generations to experience shooting the weapon that armed victory in World War II and Korea. The program preserves not just historical artifacts, but living connections to military heritage. National match competitions continue featuring M1 Garands in dedicated categories. Skilled shooters achieve remarkable accuracy using rifles manufactured 70 years ago. The competitions maintain traditions established during the M1's development era, when Camp Perry matches tested prototype rifles against established designs. Modern competitors shooting vintage Garands honor that legacy through practical marksmanship that demonstrates the rifle's enduring capabilities. Museums across America display M1 Garands in collections documenting military history. The Smithsonian Institution holds John Garand's personal rifles and design documents. Springfield Armory National Historic Site preserves the facility where the rifle was developed and produced. These institutions ensure that future generations can study the weapon that transformed infantry warfare. But the most meaningful preservation occurs in private hands, where veterans and their families maintain M1 Garands as family heirlooms connecting present to past. Staff Sergeant William Morrison's grandson, receiving his grandfather's rifle, accepts responsibility for preserving not just a weapon, but a story of sacrifice and survival. The M1 becomes a tangible link between generations. Physical, evidence that freedom requires defense, and that defenders require proper tools. When that grandson takes the rifle to the range and fires it for the first time, he experiences something profound. The recoil, the sight picture, the distinctive ping of the ejecting clip all connect him to his grandfather's combat experience in ways that words cannot convey. The rifle that saved William Morrison's life at the Bulge now serves as educational tool, teaching new generations about the cost of freedom and the importance of preparedness. Klaus Richter, the German soldier who survived the war and immigrated to America, experiences similar connections, handling an M1 in Detroit. The weapon that represented defeat to his army becomes symbol of his new country's values: innovation, industrial capacity, and commitment to defending freedom. Richter's journey from Wehrmacht soldier to American citizen reflects broader themes of redemption and reconciliation that define the post-war era. His assessment in that Detroit gun shop carries weight precisely because he fought on the losing side. He understands through direct experience how material advantage shapes strategic outcomes. The M1 Garand wasn't why Germany lost, but it exemplified the industrial and technological superiority that made Allied victory inevitable once American productive capacity fully mobilized. The mathematical analysis Klaus Richter articulates to the shop owner reflects tactical reality that every combat veteran understands. In infantry combat, volume of accurate fire determines tactical outcomes more than any other single factor. The side that delivers more rounds on target wins firefights. The M1 Garand increased American infantry's fire delivery by factor of 4 compared to bolt-action opposition. That advantage, multiplied across millions of soldiers and thousands of engagements, accumulated into strategic significance. General George Marshall recognized this when identifying the M1 as crucial factor in American military effectiveness. Dwight Eisenhower acknowledged it when ensuring adequate M1 production received highest priority. Omar Bradley relied on it when planning operations that assumed American infantry's firepower superiority. The rifle became integral to how American commanders conceptualized infantry operations. Enemy commanders adapted tactics accordingly. German defensive doctrine increasingly emphasized prepared positions, extended engagement distances, and concentration of automatic weapons to offset American infantry's firepower. Japanese tactics shifted toward night infiltration and close assault, where American fire superiority mattered less. Chinese forces in Korea employed human wave tactics, specifically designed to overwhelm defenders before sustained fire could inflict decisive casualties. But adaptations only mitigated, never eliminated, the fundamental advantage that semi-automatic rifles provided. The M1 Garand remained America's ace in infantry combat, the weapon that gave individual soldiers confidence and capability that superior training alone could not provide. The greatest battle implement ever devised earned its reputation through 20 years of exemplary service, 2 major wars, and countless small actions where American soldiers trusted their lives to John Garand's genius. The rifle worked when everything else failed. It fired when conditions defeated other weapons. It kept Americans alive in situations where inferior equipment would have meant death. That simple legacy matters more than technical specifications or production statistics. The M1 Garand served the soldiers who carried it faithfully and effectively. In return, those soldiers granted the rifle recognition and respect that only combat veterans can truly bestow. The bond between warrior and weapon, forged in combat stress and validated through survival, creates loyalty that transcends rational analysis. Eugene Sledge, maintaining his training rifle decades after Okinawa, demonstrates this loyalty. William Morrison, passing his combat rifle to his grandson, affirms it. Klaus Richter, acknowledging the weapon's superiority despite personal defeat, validates it. The M1 Garand earned these tributes through performance that justified faith soldiers placed in it. The rifle represents what America can accomplish when industrial democracy mobilizes fully, when immigrant determination meets engineering excellence, when military necessity drives innovation unconstrained by tradition, when soldiers receive tools equal to their courage. The M1 Garand embodies these principles in steel and walnut, creating legacy that endures long after the last shot fired in anger. When Klaus Richter handles that M1 Garand in a Detroit gun shop years after the war, he experiences these truths through physical contact with the weapon that defeated his army. The rifle's weight, its balance, its mechanical precision all testify to the industrial capacity and design. excellence that armed American victory. This rifle, Richter tells the shop owner, weighing the M1 in his hands, this rifle is why we lost. Not this rifle alone, but everything it represents. You had these by the millions. We had nothing comparable. That tells the whole story of the war. The admission from a combat veteran carries weight that technical specifications cannot convey. The M1 Garand earned its reputation not through propaganda or mythology, but through performance in the hands of millions of soldiers across 2 major wars. The rifle worked when lives depended on it working. That simple fact justifies every accolade, every tribute, every recognition it has received. That legacy endures in every M1 Garand still firing at rifle ranges, in every veteran's memoir mentioning the weapon that kept them alive, in every collector who maintains these rifles as working links to history. The greatest battle implement ever devised earned its reputation one firefight at a time, proving itself through the most demanding test, combat effectiveness, when lives hung in the balance. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.